The great throne room of the Zyran Empire was a place where no human had ever dared to raise his voice. The tall marble pillars, the burning blue torches, and the alien banners hanging from the ceiling all screamed power and fear. Hundreds of alien nobles filled the hall, their sharp eyes glowing like predators. At the center, on a throne of black stone, sat Queen Serenia, ruler of half the galaxy. Feared and worshipped as if she was a goddess. But on this day, something impossible happened. A lone human stood before her throne. His name was Kael. His wrists were bound in glowing chains, his face bruised from battles and punishment, but his eyes were burning with anger. He had seen his people treated as slaves, forced to work in alien mines, whipped for the smallest mistake. He had begged for mercy once, and it had been ignored. Today, he was done begging. The queen leaned forward. Her long tail, covered with scales that shimmered like emerald fire, swayed lazily behind her throne. That tail was sacred. It was more than a body part. It was a symbol of her bloodline, her pride, her authority. No one outside her family was ever allowed to touch it. To even glance at it for too long could mean death. She smiled coldly at the human. "Speak, little soldier. What will you say before I end your life?" Kael looked up. His jaw tightened. His chest rose and fell with fury. And then before anyone could stop him, he surged forward. His chains rattled, his hands shot out, and he grabbed the queen's tail with both fists. The entire throne room gasped. It was like time stopped. Dozens of guards unsheathed their weapons at once, their fangs bared, their voices rising in rage. "Blasphemy! Kill him!" The nobles stood from their seats, shouting, hissing, shrieking in disbelief. No one, in all the history of the empire, had ever dared such an insult. To touch the queen's tail was not only rebellion, it was a death sentence beyond forgiveness. But Kael did not let go. His knuckles turned white as he gripped tighter. His voice shook the hall. "You sit here in your throne while my people starve in chains. You call yourself a queen, but you are nothing more than a tyrant. If death is what you want for me, then let it be after I remind you that you are not untouchable." His words echoed like thunder. Everyone expected the queen to scream in rage, to lash her tail and cut his throat, to order the guards to tear him apart. That was the law. That was tradition. That was the only possible reaction. But Queen Serenia did not move. Her golden eyes widened, her lips parted slightly. And for the first time in decades, her throne room was silent, not because of fear, but because of shock. Instead of pulling away, she stared at Kael's hands holding her tail. She studied his face, the fire in his eyes, the way he shook with both anger and despair. Something about it unsettled her. Something about it stirred a memory she had long buried. The guards shouted again, their spears aimed at Kael's heart. "Your Majesty, command us. We will end him now." Serenia raised her hand slowly. The room fell quiet again. Her voice was calm, but carried the weight of command. No one moves. The guards froze. The nobles gasped. Even Kael himself looked confused. The queen stood from her throne, her tail still in his grip. She leaned closer, so close he could see the faint scar on her cheek from a war long ago. Her voice was low, almost a whisper, yet every creature in the hall heard it. "No one has ever dared to touch me," she said. "No one has ever had the courage or the foolishness." Kael met her gaze, unflinching. "Then remember me, Queen, because I'd rather die with defiance than live on my knees." For a long moment, the two of them stared at each other, the human prisoner and the alien queen, locked in a battle of willpower that was stronger than any blade. And then, the queen did something no one could have predicted. She smiled. Not a cruel smile, not a mocking smile. A smile of something else. Amusement, interest, perhaps even respect. The hall trembled with whispers. The queen pulled her tail slowly from his grip, But instead of ordering his death, she turned to her people and spoke words that struck like lightning. Stand down. No one touches him. He is mine to deal with. The guards lowered their weapons, though their eyes burned with disbelief. The nobles whispered furiously, unable to understand what they had just witnessed. As for Kael, he stood there, breathing hard, waiting for death. But it did not come. Instead, he had shaken the very foundation of an empire with a single act of rage. And in that silence, everyone knew nothing would ever be the same again. Asterisk. The throne room had not stopped whispering since the queen's shocking command. A human had grabbed her sacred tail, and instead of burning him alive or tearing him apart, she had let him live. Not only leave, she had claimed him as hers to deal with. That alone was enough to shake centuries of tradition. Kael was dragged away in glowing chains. His feet scraped across the smooth stone floor, but his head stayed high. Guards hissed at him, spitting curses, calling him animal and filth. Yet he did not flinch. Every step he took felt heavier, but his eyes burned with the same fire he had shown in front of the queen. The dungeon was carved deep beneath the palace. The air was damp, the walls rough, and the smell of old blood clung to every stone. The guards shoved him into a cell with a loud clang. This is where courage ends. One of them sneered, pressing his spear against the bars. You touch the queen's tail. Tomorrow your body will be hung in the square. Kael gave no answer. He sat on the cold ground, his chains glowing faintly, and closed his eyes. If death was coming, he would face it without fear. But deep inside he wondered, why didn't she kill me right there? Why did she stop them? Hours passed. The dungeon was quiet except for the dripping of water. Kael drifted between anger and exhaustion. Then, without warning, the silence broke, the sound of footsteps, light but steady, echoing through the darkness. The guards outside the cell straightened. Their scales stiffened. Your Majesty, they said quickly, bowing their heads. Kael opened his eyes, and there she was, Queen Serenia herself. Descending into the dungeon, her emerald tail swaying behind her, her golden eyes glowing faintly in the shadows. She dismissed the guards with a wave of her hand. They hesitated, confused, fearful, but obeyed. Soon, the queen and the human were alone. She stopped in front of his cell. For a long moment, she said nothing. She only stared at him, her gaze sharp as a blade, her expression unreadable. Kael forced himself to meet her eyes. His voice was rough but steady. If you came here to watch me beg, you will be disappointed. Her lips curved into something that was not quite a smile. Begging is for the weak. You are not weak. You are reckless, foolish, but not weak. Kael frowned. Then why am I still alive? The queen tilted her head, studying him like one would study a strange animal. Because you interest me. No one touches me. No one dares. But you. She leaned closer, her voice soft as silk. You grabbed my tail as if you wanted to die in my hands. Why? Kael's fists tightened in his chains. Because you enslave my people. Because your guards beat them, starve them, chain them like beasts. I couldn't stand and watch anymore. If you want to know why, there it is. His words hung heavy in the cold air. For a second, Serenia's eyes flickered with something he could not name: anger, sorrow, or maybe memory. Then, to his surprise, she laughed softly. Humans. Always so defiant. Her laughter was not cruel. It was curious. Like she was seeing something rare. Kael's jaw clenched. Defiance is all we have left. The queen stepped even closer, her golden eyes glowing brighter in the dim light. Perhaps. Or perhaps defiance is what makes you dangerous. He expected her to strike him, to end him with a single command. But instead, she reached toward the lock. With a flick of her claw, the glowing bars slid open. Kael froze. The queen stepped back, her tail curling slowly behind her. Your chains will stay for now. But I want to see if your fire is real or only words. What do you mean? He asked. You will have your chance, she whispered. A test. Survive it, and maybe you will prove that humans are not as pathetic as my council believes. Fail, and I will kill you myself. Before Kael could reply, she turned away. The sound of her footsteps faded into the dungeon halls. The door slammed shut, leaving him in darkness again, but his mind was no longer calm. She had spared him once in the throne room. Now she had opened his cell. She wanted him alive for a reason he could not yet understand. Kael sat in the shadows, chains heavy on his wrists, heart pounding in his chest. He had challenged a queen and lived. He had shouted at her, defied her, and she had not ended him. Instead, she wanted to test him. Why? Was it curiosity? Amusement? Or something more dangerous? As Kael leaned back against the cold wall, he knew one thing. Whatever was coming next would decide not only his fate, but perhaps the fate of all humans under her empire. And somewhere above. In her throne room, Queen Serenia smiled to herself, whispering words no one else heard. Maybe. He is the one. The dungeon was quiet when Kael woke to the sound of grinding stone. His eyes snapped open. The cell wall behind him was sliding away, revealing a dark tunnel beyond. The glowing chains on his wrists flickered and broke apart as if by unseen command. Kael stood slowly, his body tense. He didn't know if this was freedom or a trick, but his instincts whispered danger. He stepped into the tunnel. The wall closed behind him, sealing him inside. The air smelled of dust and iron. Torches lit one by one along the walls, guiding him forward like a path made for prey. His fists tightened. So this is her test. The path opened into a vast chamber beneath the palace. The ground was rough, the ceiling high, and strange markings covered the stone. It looked like an arena, an ancient one, hidden from the eyes of the nobles above. From the shadows, he heard movement, heavy, animal-like. Then out of the darkness, a creature emerged. It was twice the size of Kael. Its body covered in thick, armored scales, claws sharp enough to rip steel. Its eyes glowed a hungry red, and its breath hissed like steam. Chains rattled on its legs, but they snapped apart as soon as Kael entered the chamber. The beast roared. Kael's heart pounded, but he forced himself not to back away. His body ached from bruises and hunger, but running was not an option. The queen was watching, he was sure of it. Somewhere hidden, she was watching every move. The creature lunged. Kael rolled to the side, barely avoiding claws that slashed into the stone floor, leaving deep scars. Dust filled the air. He coughed, then grabbed a broken piece of chain from the ground. It wasn't a weapon, but it was better than nothing. He swung the chain when the beast attacked again. The metal struck across its snout, making it roar louder, angrier. Kael stumbled back, his breath ragged. His mind screamed at him to surrender, but his heart whispered something else. Defiance is all we have left. The fight dragged on. Each time the beast lunged, Kael dodged narrowly, striking with the chain or throwing rocks. His arms burned, his body screamed in pain, but his will refused to break. Then, just as the beast cornered him, something unexpected happened. The chain in his hand began to glow. Not faintly like before, bright, white-hot. Kael blinked, shocked, but instinct guided him. He swung it with all his strength. The glowing chain wrapped around the beast's neck, crackling with strange energy. The creature shrieked, thrashing violently, but the light tightened, burning through its armored scales. With one final roar, the beast collapsed, its massive body crashing against the stone. Kael stood there, chest heaving, his hands trembling. He stared at the glowing chain, then at the fallen beast. Slowly the light faded, leaving only cold metal in his grip. Silence filled the arena. Then, a soft clap echoed through the chamber. Kael turned sharply from the shadows. Queen Serenia stepped forward. She was dressed differently, now not in her royal robes, but in lighter armor, her tail swaying gracefully behind her. Her golden eyes gleamed with satisfaction. "You survived," she said, her voice calm but carrying pride. "Better than I expected." Kael glared at her. "You threw me in here with a monster. You wanted me dead." Her lips curved faintly. "If I wanted you dead, you would not be standing now." He narrowed his eyes. "Then why? Why play these games?" The queen walked closer, circling him slowly, like a predator circling prey. "Because words are cheap. Any slave can shout defiance in chains. I wanted to see if your fire still burns when death stares into your eyes." Kael clenched his fists. "And what do you see now?" She stopped in front of him. Their eyes locked. For a moment, neither spoke. Then she leaned closer, her whisper brushing the air. "I see a human worth keeping alive." Kael's chest tightened. He didn't know if her words were a promise or a threat. The queen's tail swayed, curling as she stepped back. This was only the beginning. There will be more tests, more trials. If you survive them all, you may stand beside me instead of under my boot. Her golden eyes flashed with something unreadable challenge. Curiosity, maybe even respect. But before Kael could answer, she raised her hand. The ground beneath him shook, and once again, the stone wall began to close, sealing him in darkness. Her last words lingered in the air as the chamber swallowed him whole. "Do not disappoint me, human. The Empire is watching." The palace was alive with whispers. Servants spoke in hushed voices as they carried trays. Guards exchanged glances when they passed one another in the halls. Even the nobles, proud and arrogant, lowered their voices when the name of the human was spoken. Kael, the man who had grabbed the queen's sacred tail and lived. The prisoner who had been thrown to a beast in the underground arena and killed it with nothing but a chain. Such things were not supposed to happen. Humans were supposed to be weak, broken, obedient. Yet one had defied everything. In the slave quarters, the stories spread like fire. "He touched her tail," whispered one man as he rubbed his chained wrists. "And she didn't kill him. They say he fought the beast of Rinner with his bare hands," another added. "And he lived." Hope was dangerous, but it was also unstoppable. For the first time in years, the human slaves looked at one another with something more than fear in their eyes. They looked with possibility. Kael, meanwhile, sat once again in the darkness of his cell. His body ached from wounds, his muscles burned, but his spirit refused to bow. He replayed the fight in his mind, the glowing chain, the impossible strength that had surged through him. He did not understand it, but he knew one thing. The queen had seen it, too, and she was not finished with him. The sound of footsteps pulled him from his thoughts. Heavy boots. A guard approached his cell and slammed a tray of food through the bars. "Eat, human," the guard snarled. "You'll need strength for what's coming." Kael's eyes narrowed. "What's coming?" The guard smirked but said nothing. He left, his laughter echoing down the corridor. High above, in her private chamber, Queen Serenia sat by the window overlooking the city. She had dismissed her advisors for the evening. Their endless complaints about tradition, honor, and laws had grown tiresome. They did not understand. They could not understand. The human was different. Her people had always seen humans as fragile, useful only for labor, beneath even the lowest alien caste. But Serenia had seen something else in Kael: fire, courage, and a strange power that stirred even her battle-hardened heart. "Why you?" she whispered into the night, her tail flicking thoughtfully. "Why now?" Her reflection in the window caught her own faint smile. It had been centuries since anyone had dared to look her in the eyes without fear. Centuries since anyone had made her feel alive. The next morning, Kael was dragged from his cell once again. His wrists were bound, but looser than before. 2 guards escorted him through the palace halls. As they passed, servants stared wide-eyed. Some bowed low to the guards, but their eyes lingered on Kael, whispering behind their hands. He could not hear the words, but he saw the sparks in their faces. They reached the training yard. Here, alien warriors sparred with blades that hummed with energy. Kael was shoved into the center. The guards jeered as another figure stepped forward, an armored alien commander, towering, his 4 arms carrying 2 spears. "This is your next test," one guard said mockingly. "Try not to die too quickly." The commander grinned, showing sharp teeth. "So this is the famous human. Let us see what you are made of." The crowd of soldiers cheered. The commander lunged. Kael barely avoided the first strike, the spears whistling past his face. The ground shook as they slammed into the sand. He rolled, grabbed the training staff from the rack, and swung it with all his strength. The wood cracked against the commander's shoulder, but it barely staggered him. The fight was brutal. Each strike Kael made was met with twice the force. Sweat poured down his face, his breath came ragged, but he did not stop. Again and again, he rose, deflecting, countering, striking. The soldiers watching began to murmur. The human should have been crushed already. And yet he fought like fire itself. Finally, with one desperate move, Kael twisted under a spear thrust, jammed the staff into the commander's legs, and sent the towering warrior crashing to the ground. Dust exploded into the air. Silence followed. Then, slowly, the soldiers began to cheer. Not mockery, not disdain, but true excitement. The commander lay on the ground, stunned. Kael stood over him, chest heaving, eyes burning. High above the yard, in her balcony, Queen Serenia watched silently. Her golden eyes glowed as she whispered only to herself, "Yes." The whispers will spread. That night, in the slave quarters, the whispers grew louder. They say he defeated one of the Queen's own commanders. They say the Queen herself watches him, every test. They say, maybe humans are not broken after all. Hope was spreading like cracks in stone, and in the shadows of the palace, where rebels and spies whispered in secret, a dangerous thought was born. If one human can defy the Queen and live, maybe others can too. Kael lay in his cell once more, body aching, but his spirit burning brighter than ever. He did not yet know it, but his defiance had already started, something he could not control. The Queen's tests had made him a symbol, and symbols could not be caged forever. The day began with silence in the palace, but beneath that silence, tension pulsed like a heartbeat. Servants avoided eye contact. Guards muttered as they passed one another. Even the nobles kept their conversations short. The name of one human lingered on every tongue. Kael. He had touched the Queen's sacred tail and lived. He had slain the beast of Rinner. He had defeated a commander in the training yard. Each act should have ended in his death, but instead, each made him more dangerous, more symbolic. And now, the Queen had summoned him again. Kael stood in the center of the grand dueling arena, a circular hall with walls of stone and banners of conquest hanging high above. Thousands of alien eyes watched from the stands. Warriors, nobles, slaves, even children. Everyone had gathered to see the human's next test. At the far end of the arena, Queen Serenia sat on her throne, high above, her golden eyes fixed on him. Kael's wrists were unbound this time. He carried only a simple sword, an alien blade too heavy for his hand. Yet the only weapon he had been given. Across from him stood his opponent, a giant warrior, armored in obsidian plates, carrying 2 long curved swords. His name was General Vaynor, one of Serenia's most feared champions. He had led armies across galaxies. His victories were sung in war chants. And now, his orders were simple. Kill the human. The crowd roared as the general stepped forward. Kael gripped the heavy sword tighter. He could feel the weight of thousands of eyes on him. He could feel the queen's gaze, most of all steady, unblinking, like she was waiting for something. The horn blew. The trial began. Vaynor moved with terrifying speed. His first strike came like lightning, his twin blades flashing in the air. Kael barely raised his sword in time. The impact rattled his bones, sent him stumbling back. The crowd laughed cruelly. The general pressed forward, attack after attack, his blades a blur of death. Kael dodged, rolled, blocked, each movement costing him strength he did not have. His arms ached. His chest heaved. His sword felt like a mountain in his hands. I can't win this. His mind screamed, but deep inside, another voice pushed back. Defiance is all we have left. The general struck again. Kael twisted, letting one blade slash past his ribs, close enough to draw blood, but using the moment to slam his sword into the general's knee. The armored giant stumbled. The crowd gasped. Kael pressed forward, striking again and again, sparks flying as his heavy sword clashed against the twin blades. For a moment, it seemed impossible, but for that moment, Kael held his ground. The general roared in anger. He struck harder, faster, his fury shaking the arena. Kael was knocked to his knees, his sword slipping from his hands. The crowd cheered, certain the end had come. The general raised both blades high. But then something happened. A shadow fell across the arena. A blur of emerald scales. The queen's tail lashed out, slamming between Kael and the killing blow. The ground cracked from the impact, the general stumbling back in shock. The entire arena froze. Queen Sirenia stood, her golden eyes blazing. Her voice cut through the silence like fire. Enough. The crowd erupted in confusion. Nobles shouted. Guards exchanged panicked looks. A general had been stopped mid-kill by the queen herself. Kael stared up at her, stunned. His chest heaved, blood dripping from his side. He did not understand why she had saved him. The queen's gaze met his. For a brief second, he saw something he had never seen in her eyes before, something almost human. Then she turned to the crowd. This trial is complete. The human has proved himself again. He is not to be killed. The stands erupted in outrage. Blasphemy! One noble cried. Tradition cannot be broken. Kill him now. Another shouted. But the queen raised her hand, and silence fell. He is mine to command. Any who question me will answer with their lives. Her words struck like thunder. Even the nobles dared not speak further. That night, the whispers grew louder than ever. In the slave quarters, humans whispered, the queen saved him. She stopped her own general. Among the guards, why does she protect him? What is he to her? Among the nobles, she risks everything for one human. Is she mad, or does she see something we do not? And in the shadows, where rebellion plotted in secret, a dangerous thought spread like fire. If the queen protects him, maybe he is more than just a man. Maybe he is the key. In his cell, Kael sat in silence, blood still drying on his skin. His body screamed with pain, but his mind screamed louder with questions. Why had she stopped the fight? Why had she saved him? He remembered the way her eyes had looked, not cold, not cruel, but something else. Something he could not name. And for the first time, Kael realized a terrifying truth. The queen was not just testing him, she was changing because of him. And that meant the empire itself might change too. Asterisk. The city below the palace was restless. Nights that once fell silent now hummed with whispers. In the slave quarters, humans spoke of Kael's defiance as though it were legend. Children repeated the story of the man who grabbed the queen's tail. Women sang hushed songs about the fighter who would not kneel. And in the hidden corners of taverns and alleys, the first sparks of rebellion glowed. If he can fight the queen's champions, then we can fight too, whispered one man. Not yet, another cautioned. But when the time comes, we will rise. The Empire did not notice yet. Or perhaps it did, but ignored the whispers, believing them too small to matter. But small sparks had a way of becoming fire. Kael did not know how much the world beyond his cell was changing because of him. He only knew the Queen kept calling him back again and again. This time, she did not summon him to an arena. She summoned him to her private garden, a place no prisoner had ever walked. The garden glowed under pale moons, filled with strange flowers that shimmered like starlight. Waterfalls poured into clear pools. The air was warm, scented with blossoms. It felt unreal after the stench of stone dungeons. Kael stood, still in chains, as Queen Serenia approached him. She wore no crown, no heavy armor, only a simple gown of black silk. Her golden eyes studied him, calm and unreadable. "You confuse my council," she said softly. "They demand your death. They say you are a danger. Perhaps they are right." Kael met her gaze. "Then why haven't you killed me?" The Queen's tail swayed slowly. "Because you remind me of something I lost." Her words caught him off guard. For the first time, her voice sounded less like a ruler's and more like a woman's. Kael frowned. What could a queen lose? "You rule half the galaxy." Her lips pressed into a thin line. She looked toward the glowing flowers, as if the memories were too heavy to face. "Once, long ago, I had a brother. Fierce, reckless, unyielding. He was not like the others of our kind. He questioned me, defied me. He made me see the world differently. Until he was killed." Kael's jaw tightened. "Killed by humans?" She shook her head slowly. "Killed by my own council for daring to challenge tradition. And I was too weak to stop it." For a moment, Kael saw something in her eyes, grief, sharp and raw. He almost forgot who she was, almost. "You see now why you interest me," she said. "You carry the same fire he did, dangerous, untamed, but necessary." Kael's voice was steady. "If you see that fire, then why do you still keep my people in chains?" Her eyes narrowed, gold flashing. "Because if I free them too soon, the Empire will tear itself apart. My rule will collapse. The nobles will revolt. Blood will drown the streets." "Maybe that's the price of freedom," Kael shot back. For the first time, her calm broke. She stepped closer, her tail whipping behind her, her voice sharp. "You speak as if you know what it means to hold an empire together. You don't. You think freedom is won with anger alone. But I have seen empires burn, and what rises from the ashes is often worse." Kael did not flinch. "Then teach me. If you truly believe humans are more than slaves, prove it. Don't just test me in your arenas. Show me you mean what you say." The garden went silent. The waterfall seemed distant. The Queen's golden eyes locked with his. For a long, heavy moment, she said nothing. Then she whispered, "Careful, human. You are closer to me than anyone has been in centuries. That is both a gift and a threat." Before Kael could reply, a loud crash shook the garden. From the shadows, 3 masked figures leapt into view. Blades gleamed in the moonlight. They were not human slaves. They were alien assassins, dressed in black, their eyes burning with hatred. "Traitor Queen!" One of them hissed. "You disgrace the Empire with this human. Tonight you die." Kael's instincts exploded. He grabbed the chain still dangling from his wrist and wrapped it around his fist. The assassins rushed forward. The Queen's tail whipped, knocking one aside. Kael swung his chain, cracking it across another's face. The third lunged with a blade. Kael caught his wrist, twisted, and slammed his head against the stone wall. The fight was brutal and fast. Within moments, 2 assassins lay unconscious. One fled into the shadows. Kael stood panting, blood dripping from a cut on his arm. The Queen's chest rose and fell, her golden eyes glowing in fury. She turned to him. For a moment, silence. Then, she said quietly, almost to herself, "They sent assassins into my garden. Because of you." Kael wiped the blood from his face. "No, they came because of you. You protected me. You defied your own counsel. They fear what you're becoming." The queen's expression hardened, but her eyes betrayed the truth. Kael stepped closer, his voice low but fierce. "You said your brother died because he defied tradition. Are you ready to let me die the same way? Or will you finally choose who you truly are?" Her tail curled, trembling like a coiled serpent. The sound of guards approaching filled the garden, and in that tense silence, Queen Serenia knew one thing clearly. The rebellion had already begun inside her palace, inside her people, and inside herself. The palace trembled with unrest. The assassination attempt in the queen's private garden had shaken the empire to its core. By dawn, the whispers of rebellion were no longer whispers. They had become shouts in the streets, murmurs in noble halls, and chants in the slave quarters. Kael's name had spread like fire. Some called him a symbol of strength. Others called him a curse. But everyone knew his presence had broken something in the empire that could never be repaired. In the throne room, Queen Serenia stood tall, her golden eyes blazing as her council shouted around her, "He is dangerous." One noble snarled, "The slaves believe he is their savior. Kill him now before it is too late." "Your people already doubt you," another hissed. "You protect a human more than your own kind. This is weakness." But Serenia raised her hand, silencing them with one sharp command, "Enough." The room fell quiet. Her tail flicked like a whip as she spoke. "You call me weak, yet none of you could face him as I have. None of you could see what I see. And what is that, my queen?" One counselor sneered. Her voice was calm but heavy with fire. "A future where humans are not slaves. A future where fire is not crushed, but shaped." Gasps filled the hall. Several nobles rose in anger, but Serenia's gaze burned them back into silence. That same night, Kael sat in his cell, restless. He could hear the noise of the city beyond the palace walls, chants, protests, the clash of steel in the distance. Something had started, and it was bigger than him now. The door creaked open. It wasn't guards this time. It was Serenia herself. Her gown was torn at the shoulder, her expression grim. She carried no crown, no armor. Only her golden eyes shone in the dim torchlight. "Come," she said simply. Kael frowned. "To another test?" She shook her head. "No, to war." The palace gates burst open at dawn. A tide of humans surged through the streets, carrying stolen weapons, tools, and chains turned into blades. They were not trained soldiers, but their voices thundered like an army. The nobles had gathered their forces as well. Alien warriors marched in rows, their spears glowing, their armor clattering. The city had become a battlefield waiting to ignite. Kael stood at Serenia's side on the palace steps. For the first time, he was not chained. A blade hung at his side, light and balanced, forged by her own smiths. The rebels looked at him with fire in their eyes. The nobles glared with hatred. And all of them looked at her, the queen waiting for her to choose. One counselor stepped forward, shouting across the square, "Serenia! Kill him now, prove your loyalty, and the empire will remain whole." Kael's jaw tightened. He whispered, "If you kill me, they'll remember me as a symbol. If you stand with me, you'll change everything." Her tail curled, trembling. The weight of centuries pressed down on her. Tradition, bloodlines, empire versus truth, change, and a single human who had dared to defy her. She raised her voice, loud enough for the city to hear. This empire was built on chains. Chains of fear. Chains of lies. But today those chains will break. The nobles shouted in outrage. The humans roared with hope. Kael stepped forward, his sword raised. "Then let's break them." The battle exploded. Rebels clashed with soldiers in the streets. Blades rang, voices screamed, fire lit the skies. Kael fought at the queen's side, his strikes fast and furious. Every time he fell, he rose again, driven not by strength, but by defiance. The queen fought like a storm. Her tail lashed, her claws tore through armor, her voice commanded both fear and awe. For the first time, she was not fighting for her empire, she was fighting for change. But the nobles were not weak. General Vaynor himself returned, blades flashing, fury burning in his eyes. He charged straight for Kael, roaring vengeance. Kael met him head-on. Their blades clashed again and again, sparks flying. Vaynor struck with monstrous strength, but Kael's defiance burned hotter. This time, he was not fighting for survival. He was fighting for every human in chains. Finally, with one desperate strike, Kael drove his blade into the general's chest. Vaynor staggered, gasped, and fell. His swords clattering to the ground. The battlefield froze. The symbol of the nobles. Power had fallen to a human. The humans roared in triumph. The soldiers faltered. The nobles stared in disbelief, and Queen Serenia raised her voice above the chaos. Hear me. From this day forward, no human is a slave. Any who raise chains again will answer to me. Her words struck like thunder. The rebellion stopped, not because it was crushed, but because the impossible had happened. The queen herself had broken the old world. That night, the fires of battle still smoked, but the city was quiet. Kael stood on the palace balcony, staring at the stars. His body ached, his hands trembled, but his spirit burned brighter than ever. Serenia stood beside him. For once, she did not look like a queen. She looked almost human. You've changed everything, Kael said softly. Her golden eyes met his. No, human. We did. And in that silence, under the endless stars, both knew the galaxy itself had shifted. The age of chains was ending, and the age of fire of defiance was just beginning.